Please introduce yourself, and then you can go ahead and share your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. Good afternoon from Abuja to everyone. Like Grace introduced earlier, my name is Segun Ogunwale. I currently lead the team at Bridgeware, which works with higher institutions to support with platforms, content, and resources to prepare students for the world of work. We've been a member of the collaborative, I think, since 2021, and we've found it to be a very beneficial community, both to the purpose of advancing our education in Africa and to our work in person. In the next 60 to 90 minutes, we'll be having a conversation around digital skills for the world of work, measuring those skills, and also how we've been able to work, with the Education Collaborative in developing a digital tool alongside other partner institutions, which I'll be working us through in the next hour. I hope it's as interactive as much as possible. There will be polls to keep us engaged. And afterwards, also, there will be questions. And most importantly, also, there will be a call to action for each institution to be able to get on board in terms of also rolling out this initiative in our institutions. So that's just about it. I think we need to get the ball rolling. So I'm going to share my screen now so that we can proceed, with the presentation for the day. So today's topic, measuring the digital skills of students for graduate employability. A digital skills assessment tool for higher institutions. So where it all started, during the June convening in Chelsea University in 2022, at that time, we were the second year of our 3-year thematic theme, which is on building the capacity of higher institutions to improve Africa's education career outcomes, outcomes for students. And in one of the dialogues that happened at that convening, there was one that talked about graduate employability. And the question in the room that day was, are higher institutions doing enough to prepare students for the world of work? What made that dialogue particularly interesting was that we had almost an equal balance of industry practitioners, employers, and higher education leaders in the room. And I remember this lady from Kenya, who happens to be an employer, saying that sometimes, or many times when she recruits graduates from institutions in our country, she has to do a lot of retraining, especially around digital skills. Many of them cannot use CRM tools. So when we say CRM, customer relationship management tools. And that this was much of a concern for her in terms of, are we really sure that higher institutions are doing as much as possible to ensure that students have the skills, for the world of work? I remember that also on the side of higher education leaders, Professor Gateru and Dr. George Mugabe were, also trying to, mention as much as possible what our institutions have been doing. So it was a very heated conversation. But that's one of the things that, the convening makes possible, that dialogue, those conversations, which spark critical thinking and then a call to action of getting something done. It was exactly in that room that we saw the need to say, can we have a tool that makes it possible for institutions to be able to access digital skills, and in that process also make students aware of the gaps and then put plans in place to close that gap. For today's presentation, we'll be going through, 4 critical areas of the journey. The first one being why digital skills. The second one, the challenges of digital skilling for higher institutions. And the third one, a solution to these challenges, which the core of today's presentation is built around. And the last one is getting your institution on board, which is a call to action. So I start with digital skills. So when we say digital skills, sometimes a conversation may seem hot, but we also need to ask ourselves, is this just a trend? Is this reality? Why so much emphasis on digital skills? They've been saying this for quite a while. Why is this so much important? And I will tell us why. It's all about employability. In terms of, graduates having the skills to thrive in the world of work, either as employees or entrepreneurs. When we talk about employability skills, we have different frameworks or competence models, across, different climes. Often, they are often grouped into what we call technical skills that the graduate should have. We have the soft skills, We have the people skills, some have the interpersonal skills. And another core set of skills is what we call the digital literacy skills. So for most of these frameworks, this is how employability skills are grouped in terms of technical skills, soft skills, personal skills, interpersonal skills. I mean, mostly different skills revolve around soft skills and technical skills. And then you also have digital literacy, digital proficiency as another core skill set when it comes to employability frameworks. And this is where I would be asking my first question for, this session in terms of, this poll. Let me ask us, when we talk about digital skills, do we think it's a soft skill or more of a technical skill? Grace, are we ready for the poll, please?
Give me a minute. I don't know. It says my poll is inactive. So
okay. If that
you
is
can
going
just
to
go
be...
ahead as we fit. No, we'll fix
Okay.
it. But you can
I was
just
about
go ahead
suggesting we
and
can
then...
even drop our opinion in the, in the chat, in the message to say, okay, thank you, that's all. So the question is this: digital skills. Do you see them as more of a technical skill or a soft skill? Okay, we are seeing our results. This is getting interesting. It's almost getting, okay. Interesting. Still expecting more responses. I think we need responses that forms a quorum so that we can then say as much voices as possible as participating in this session have been represented in today's conversation. Okay, so we have 82% of, participants that have responded. 64% says, digital skills are technical skills. And 36% says that digital skills are soft skills. Interestingly, both answers are correct answers because digital skills are at the intersection of both technical skills and soft skills. So digital skills are equally technical, and so also are these soft skills. And I would share more, along the way as we proceed with the presentation. So we then say, so like I said, in the previous frameworks for employability that we used to have in terms of the employability skills for the frameworks, digital skills used to be one of those skills. But what we are seeing today in an increasingly digital world is that it does not even matter what the skill is. Digital skills have become core to the ability to perform all skills. Let me give you an example. So we talk about networking. Some say it's an interpersonal skill, it's a soft skill. That means the ability to meet people, to build relationships and build connections. Decades ago, most of our networking opportunities happened in conferences. But today, a lot of them actually happens online. For example, we are in this, conversation. Some of them happens on LinkedIn. Some of them happens on Facebook. And then you now see that what used to be a personal and soft skill today, if we don't have the digital competence to facilitate those conversations, to facilitate those meetings, then you're almost, unable to even perform that function entirely. The same thing with technical skills also. It doesn't matter whether you're going to be an engineer, whether you're going to be a lawyer, or whether you're going to be a faculty or a researcher. Most of your tools in these professions today are also digital skills, digital tools. So what we are saying today is that digital skills are not just one of those skills anymore. Digital skills are increasingly becoming the key driver of all kinds of employability skills that, you can mention, irrespective of the framework, that we are dealing with. This calls for, critical thinking, and then letting us also know that, and another misconception that we used to have is that digital skills are just for, students in STEM, as long as, for students in law, maybe less of it. No, digital skills cut across all set of competence, all set of careers, and the more you can, embrace them, the more you can use them, the higher to the peak one seems to be able to get in, in those careers. And not only more, it's even becoming a basic entry-level skill that most employers want in their employees. Looking at the numbers, to back up what has just been said. So there was a research carried out by IFC. This was 5 years ago, and I intentionally went so much backward in terms of the timeline so that we can even understand for a while this has been with us. So it was discovered from a survey that 65% of companies in Africa that were recruiting required a basic level of digital skills for the functions they were recruiting for. When the survey drew down to Ghana, they realized that there are some Ghanaian companies, as much as 20%, that recruit only internationally because they believe that digital skills that they require cannot be found in the country. Moving forward to 2023, in the US, as high as 92% of entry-level jobs today now require some set of digital skills in terms of, skills that are required for anyone to even get a basic entry job. And trust me also, in other African countries also, this is also getting as high. What are we institutions doing today? The same survey by IFC Vitahe, which is a subsidiary of IFE, I think it has been spun off independently now, that is more focused on higher education. The survey from IFC Vitahe revealed that 31%, only 31% of higher institutions in Africa offer digital literacy skills to all of their students. 26% of them for some students, while 43% of institutions do not even offer any digital skills training at all. So this is where we are in terms of the numbers, in terms of what the reality is and what, is happening in our institutions. And you will see that this shows some kind of divide in terms of, where we really have. So for the purpose of also understanding our own climate and our own landscape here, I would also ask us to take a second poll to ask two questions basically. For our own institution, do we offer any digital skills training program for students? Is that a yes or no for your institution? Please, Grace, can we have the second poll up to actually know that in this room, where we really are in terms of, what we are doing at our different institutions in terms of digital skills? The question is this: in your institution, do you have a program that is particularly dedicated towards developing digital skills for students? Is it a yes? Is it a no? The second question is this program mandatory for students or optional for students? Would love to know. So we have 20 respondents, currently around half of the room that have responded to this. Okay, please let the responses keep coming in. The numbers look so impressive. 30 more seconds, to put in, our responses. Okay, the numbers are looking very good. Yeah, I think we have a sufficient number of inputs. Okay, so, we end the poll. So thank you everyone, for putting our responses. So from the poll results here, based on the number of institutions in this room, 87% of respondents mentioned that our institutions offer a digital skilling program for students. That's 87%, and 13% said not at all. I think that's quite impressive. As a second, data point also, 70% of us mentioned that it is mandatory for all students, while 30% of us, mentioned that it is optional. I think this is quite impressive in terms of what we are doing in our institutions. And this, also set the tone for the conversation. This shows that, quite a number of us have come, to realization of, how important this is, and then also making sure that we close the gap in terms of the skill gaps at our various institutions. Going forward, we've been able to establish, why digital skills are important. We've been able to say that digital skills are not just are no longer just one of those set of skills, but has become the key driver for all kinds of skills that are required for students to thrive in the workplace. We've also been able to look at the numbers in terms of employer demand and what institutions are doing. And also from the poll conducted in this room, we've been able to see that quite a number of us have already embraced digital skilling programs, for our students in our different institutions, which is quite commendable. We are now going to move into the second part of this presentation, and that is the challenges of digital skilling for higher institutions. What are the challenges in terms of, building digital skills as core employability skills for students? we first have to understand that, higher institutions, no matter what, the trends say, no matter what the counter arguments say, remain pivotal for preparing students for the world of work. In fact, there was a research by Google and IFC on the Nigerian economy in 2020, which revealed that most programmers in the world of work today still come through the university system, contrary to what we've always thought that, the majority of them are self-taught. So we see that higher institutions still remain, pivotal in building skills and in building digital skills. But there are a few challenges that higher institutions face when it comes to skilling students with, digital skills. And we are going to look at a number of them. The first one is, the definitions. What exactly are digital skills, for employability? Digital skills are broad skills. They can be very broad. But which of these skills are most relevant to the world of work? Which of these skills do we get to teach students? Another thing about digital skills is this: they are continually evolving. For God's sake, 2 years ago, nobody was talking about, ChatGPT. Now, everybody is on the alert. Students are conscious. Lecturers also want to be sure that students are not even bringing in ChatGPT. Only God knows what else we'll be talking about tomorrow. And we'll see that continuous evolution. Before, Excel used to be the dominant thing. Everybody's talking about Google Sheet and being online or even being in the cloud. And I remember at the time when I was there back in the school, when we talked about trying to embrace cloud solutions, there was a joke in the faculty then when the registrar asked, what if it rains? What happens to our solutions that are in the cloud? These things are quite evolving in terms of, the evolution of these digital skills. And then there's also always a question of, if we're going to develop a digital skilling program for our students, then what makes it into the curriculum? What do we need to teach the students? What are the particular set of skills that we need to embrace in terms of digital skills that are numerous, diverse, and continually evolving? That is the first challenge in terms of being able to specify that when it comes to digital skilling across our students, what is minimally required and what is going deep that is not even going too deeply, considering that our students come from different backgrounds. That is the first challenge. The second challenge is this: how do we measure, how do we assess digital skills? And this becomes difficult because traditionally in higher education, or what we've done in education in general, is that we've excelled at teaching, at impacting knowledge. So when it comes to, assessment, you can always do a test for knowledge. But when it comes to skills, digital skills go beyond beyond knowledge. Students need to be able to demonstrate that they can actually, perform these tasks and use digital tools. So that becomes a challenge also of to say, how do we balance between knowledge and tools? How do we balance between what people think they know and what they can really do? This is also a major question, that arises when it comes to assessment. And I want to tell us that this is not just only a question for Africa's higher institution. It's a global question in terms of, how do you do digital skilling at scale, especially when it comes to an institutional level where we may have hundreds or even many times thousands of students that we need to impact these skills on. And the third challenge is awareness in terms of how do you convince or motivate students that there's more to the digital skills that they currently know? For the institutions we work with, sometimes students say, oh, I'm a social media, expert, I'm a content creator. How do you convince students that beyond these current skills that you think you are competent in, there's quite a lot of skills out there that are out there for students to be able to learn and then be able to understand digital skills. That's also, that's also a major challenge in terms of that. So these are the major three issues, that we became aware of, especially during that conversation that happened, in that room back in 2022. And so for that purpose, we've been able to develop a two-part solution to these challenges in terms of digital skilling and then being able to bridge that gap in our higher institutions. This solution is divided majorly into two parts. The first one is the framework that helps us to expand on what these digital skills really are, and whatever you can, and how much you can capture into the curriculum in terms of being able to train students. The second part of that solution is the assessment and the awareness itself, in terms of being able to develop an assessment and being able to administer an assessment for us to measure the digital skills for our students in our different institutions and in terms of awareness. Special thanks to the Education Collaborative for really being supportive throughout the development process, and also providing the convening grant that made the development of these solutions possible. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk us through the different parts of these solutions and how, and what each of them are and how they relate to the challenges, that we've mentioned earlier. So the first thing is the framework. Like I said earlier, digital skills are quite numerous in terms of what they are. Being able to contextualize what is important, what is essential and what is basic, it's also very important in terms of how we have been able to do that. So the first thing we did was to look at the different existing frameworks, to then say, what framework or what model in terms of competency model really captures, what students really need to know or be competent about as they are going into the world of work or as they are, being prepared as graduates. And so we were able to come up with a framework. And this framework actually has 5 major components in terms of what digital skills are. I will try to expound on each of these components. And then because this document will be made available, so we can always also look deeply into each one of them. The first one is what we call digital identity and wellness. The first part of that is the ability to create an online identity and reputation that aligns with your career goals while protecting yourself in the digital world. Like I mentioned earlier, today, a lot of work is happening, online in terms of the internet space. So you see people maintain, their identities sometimes. So you meet a person, but most times today, you're not even meeting a person, physically, you're meeting a person virtually in terms of what you see about them online. Many times, students are not aware that whatever they post online has a long way in terms of what is projected, in terms of their career outlook also. So let me give us an example today. In many developed climes, and we're also seeing it increasing in African countries also, before most recruiters will make a final recruitment decision, they will go online, or that's even if they have not done that earlier, to actually look at who are these applicants that have applied. And in terms of, are there red flags from, the content this person puts online? Does this person's, is there a consistency, to this, person's identity online? And then the more it seems that the candidate's online identity aligns with, the expectations of the employer. Yeah, we can argue that there are biases, in this, but that is the reality today. So that's what we talk about digital identity, that even tools as basic as Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, they have now become important component to what we call, the whole employability goal itself. So the ability of our students to be able to use these tools, to be able to create their identity, to be able to create a projection, it's also, it's an important employability skill. That's what we talk about online reputation management, personal well-being. We also know that these online channels, they don't come without their own dangers. The ability of students to be able to protect themselves, to be able to, tailor these things, to be able to use these devices also, not as distractions, but as enablers of work. It's also an important, component. That is where the digital identity and awareness component comes into place. And what we have also done with this framework, which I think has not been done before, is to also then say, for each of these components, considering that a student wants to build a career path in each of these components also, there's more, so what you see in the black box, or let me say the gray box, is, the specializations of different careers that students can go into in terms of the different components of the framework. The second one is what we call productivity and collaboration in the workplace. This is the ability to find information, create documents, spreadsheets, presentations, web pages, and work with and use collaboration tools and automate repetitive tasks. So this is the second component of the framework. This talks about students' ability to use emails. Things as simple as attachments, as simple as blind copying and copying, use of generative AI tools like, ChatGPT that we mentioned earlier. Do they have the ability to actually be sure that this is not just hallucinating, and they can actually differentiate between what is correct information and what is just a claim online, to be able to evaluate information sources, use of spreadsheets, use of presentation packages, online forms, document collaboration tools, cloud storage tool, virtual meeting tools, calendar, scheduling tools, and even to be able to continually learn online. I mean, do they know, I mean, the platforms to go when they need to do more training to develop their skills to get certifications? That's the second component, which is the productivity and collaboration component. The third one is digital communications. The ability to create content that informs that and to be able to distribute and manage multimedia content to inform, to educate, to inspire, to drive action, using communication channels such as emails, web pages, social media, and other channels like that. This is where we talk about instant messaging, social media, mailing lists, use of customer relationship management tools, to be able to design visually, to be able to work on blogs and websites, right? So these are, also components that have become what we used to think was expert skill sets. Are becoming basic and just generally being expected by employers today because of the kind of tools that we are seeing in the workplace. Also, there are also career specializations to that in terms of that framework. These first three are most always seen as, general. But the fourth one, also data literacy, is also becoming much expected in terms of, there's a lot of expectations around being able to also thrive in this space. And this is the ability to work with data, to read data, to understand data, to communicate data, to collect data, visualize and analyze data to make informed decisions. So we see things around being able to extract data, being able to clean up data, analyze data, visualize, do some prediction or prescription around what you found in the data, and even being able to present that data when they are making decisions or when they are trying to communicate a point. There are also specializations to this. And the last component of this framework, which one can then argue that this is really specialized, is the ability to be able to use digital tools to create analysis, models, simulations, experiences, applications, using computer codes or visual tools. Yeah, so in this space, you have what we call modeling and simulation, prototyping, coding, and programming. Now, like I said earlier, some will argue that this is very specialized. But what we're also seeing today is that we are seeing what we call low to no code tools in the workplace. These are tools that, even without you being a programmer, with drag and drop features, you are expected to be able to automate some processes, to create some prototypes, to be able to create some models and simulations. So essentially, this is a framework that we have been able to come up with. So in case any of you are reviewing your curriculums, in your institutions, you're trying to develop learning programs for students around digital skills, or you're trying to even, enrich your programs. This provides a framework through which you can actually run a checklist of, have we covered in terms of the outcomes of our students being able to actually demonstrate competence in these things. So I'll recap. The first one, digital identity and wellness. What you project online, does that align with your employability goals? Can you protect yourself in an increasingly online world? Productivity and collaboration. Does digital tools make you more productive or even inhibit your work? And today, we are in the workplace. You have to be able to work collaboratively. Most times when we recruit interns in our organization, they come with a good knowledge of Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. But I tell them that, unfortunately, we don't use that here. And this is why. No matter what you do on Microsoft Word, or no matter what you do on Excel, when your laptop crashes, that is the end of that work. So you must think online first. The starting point for work for us, at my own organization, and what you're seeing across other places is cloud tools. So even when you're starting, that work, it has to start from, you're starting from Google Docs, you're starting from, Google Sheets. So no matter what happens, that document becomes collaboratively available to everybody on the team. These are essential skill sets. Same with digital communications, data literacy, and digital innovation. So this is the first part of the solution of being able to come up with a framework that has components in terms of what needs to be covered, alongside. The question we often get, when we are developing this, when we're trying to validate this framework is that, what if there are other tools or solutions that come up tomorrow in terms of being able to then accommodate them into this framework? Are you sure that this framework is still going to be relevant in 2 or 3 years' time? The response to that is this. Yes, it's an evolving field. But what we have been able to do is this. Whatever innovation comes also will always find its place around the broad themes. So let me give an example. 2 years ago, like I mentioned earlier, there was nothing like ChatGPT. But today, despite the furor around, this news kid in the block in terms of solutions, a lot of people have been able to use it as a productivity and collaboration tool. That it's finding its place there. Some have also been able to use it as a data analytics tool. So the point I'm trying to make is this: as more technologies come into the workplace, as more tools come into the workplace, there's always a place for it, to be able to fit in terms of, what they allow or what they enable the student to do in terms of employability and relevance in the workplace. So the framework evolves alongside those developments. So that's about that. The second and very important part of this solution also is what we call the assessment tool. So the assessment tool is an interactive digital tool for students' self-assessment of their own digital skills. So what this skill does is that it presents a work scenario to the student. So the students get access to a link, it's an interactive chat, and then a work scenario is presented to the student. And based on this work scenario, the students are asked questions on the different tasks they are able to perform as that task is presented. So I will still show us a short video on how this works. And I need to, give a special shout out to Pan Atlantic University that really inspired us to be able to take this approach. So at Pan Atlantic University, they administer what we call assessment for self-awareness, for their student population, whereby the students are able to take an assessment to see where they really are in terms of self-awareness using reflective questions. And so this was the same approach we were also able to take, whereby you present an assessment to students. Some of us may be familiar with assessment from things like personality tests. You want to assess for what your interests are. Sometimes students are saying, I don't even really know, which career I'm good for. I want to know my strengths, so you can always use, so that's, questionnaires, assessment have an history, from that line. So in terms of, so what we're also able to come up with is an interactive assessment whereby students are presented a work scenario and they are asked a number of questions for them to be able to respond to, and then, then these responses are then processed to be able to say, this is where they are in terms of the digital skill set. Now, we're going to have another poll, and I promise this is the last one. This is the last poll we are going to have today. I want to ask us that in our institutions today, do we use assessment or maybe questionnaires at all? For any kind of assessment for students, maybe in the career center, probably maybe in the university in general, do we use, any sort of assessment, any sort of questionnaire, or just something interactive for us to be able to ask student questions and then help to guide students in terms of, where they need to go, just to know what the room is like in terms of, familiarity with that approach. We still need more responses. We are not, so we need to still get at least for half of the room. So it could just be like an online questionnaire that students can use to assess their interest or to know what their personality fit is, or to know, what their strengths are. It could be any of these, probably Media Bridges, personality assessment tool, quite a number of them are out there. So we see a lot of career centers today embracing them and administering them to students, just to be able to know where their students fit in terms of, different interest areas. Less than 30 seconds to go. So in case you still want to provide more responses. Okay, this is interesting. So based on the poll results, 50% of institutions here already have some kind of assessment or questionnaire that we administer to our students. To help them, discover whatever it is that we said that assessment, poll, to do. Okay, and then 50% of institutions here don't at all. Okay, thank you so much. That's an interesting finding. So it's shared almost equally in terms of those who don't and those who do. Yeah. So like I said earlier, we've been able to take that, assessment approach in terms of being able to then see, help students to be able to then discover what the skills are. So in the next slide, I will just play a short video that explains how this solution works. It's just 90 seconds. So please indulge me for that 90 seconds.
Digital technologies have become dominant in the world. Digital technologies have become dominant in the world of work. More than 90% of graduate jobs today already require digital skills. The Digital Skills Proficiency for the Workplace Awareness, an assessment tool, helps students to become aware and assess their proficiency at digital skills used in the workplace. It uses a chatbot to present a scenario with work-related tasks that require digital skills to perform. Students reflect on the tasks and respond with their ability to perform the tasks presented. At the end of the conversation with the chatbot, they receive an assessment report by email with their scores across different digital skills areas. The report also includes links to resources for improving their digital skills. A campus-wide report is also made available to staff at the career office or any other unit responsible for student skill development. This report can be used to plan digital skilling programs. The tool can be used as a survey to know what digital skills are in demand among partner employers that students need to be aware of and develop. It can also be extended to the institution's staff for digital skills awareness and assessment. Funded by the Education Collaborative, the tool is free to use for all member institutions and developed by Bridgia.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So that's just an explainer video. So let me try to interpret all that has been said. So like I said earlier, so what we simply do is to provide a link to students. And in that link, it's like they are on WhatsApp. It's a conversation going on. So a chat presents to the student a work scenario to say, you have been designated, to run this particular office. And then for that office, for you to be able to do your job, there are a number of questions that are asked. So the students are able to reflect to say, okay, can I actually perform this task? Can I not? And then the students respond to each of those questions. Why they respond to each of those questions come from different competence areas, and based on their response, their competence is calculated quantitatively, so that immediately the student finishes that assessment, they get a result to say this is where they are in terms of the different digital skill areas. They also get this result in their emails. A copy of that result is also sent to the career center or the industrial center, depending on which office has been set up by the institution, to take care of student skills development. That is essentially how it works. So it takes 30, 35 minutes, to complete. But trust me, it's interactive. And it's like you're just having a conversation, with a bot on the other side there. This is what the result looks like. It's quite, detailed. So you're able to see what your percentage level is across the different competency areas. So you get that result in your emails for the record. Like I mentioned earlier, is someone who's also designated, or probably an office that has been designated by the institution, also receives an email of the different reports of students so that have taken the assessment, and they're also able to get that in their emails also. In addition to that, for each student that completes the assessment also, there's a guide, an ebook that is also sent to the student automatically so that they can see, have access to different resources for them to develop those digital skills. So for example, if I'm lacking in a digital skill area, from this resource, from this guidebook, I can see which resources are available out there for me to develop that particular skill set. So that's something we've been able to also do, in this, for that solution. We've had different institutions within the network, Education Collaborative Network pilot this institution, this solution, and they piloted from different perspectives. So let's, for example, at Pan Atlantic University, they have a preparatory program for students that are going for internship. So internship is a major entry into the world of work for students. So the preparatory program they have for students that are going for their internship program. So what they've been able to do is that this tool is embedded as part of the preparatory tool, for students that are going into the world of work also. So both the framework and the assessment tool are embedded. So as part of the activities that students do in preparation for their internship, the digital skills assessment framework and tool have been incorporated, into that. So for other institutions also that have exit programs, finishing programs, or even particular special programs that are, focused on students that are graduating or going for internships, we can always embed, the framework as part of the curriculum, and then the tool as part of the assessment tool that we administer to students that are transitioning into the workplace. That's also, one way to look at it. The second institution is Islam. in Togo. So for Isla and Togo, the framework it's used for, just to introduce students in terms of orientation to the different digital skills. They have not used the assessment tool yet, but the framework was used for development of that presentation. Accra Technical University also, the assessment tool itself, has been, in place. A remarkable program that Accra Technical University also has for digital skilling is what we call digital program for digital scaling. So for different institutions, there are different components of the solution that may be of interest to you, and then that you can then use in terms of, being able to support student development of those digital skills. Feedback on what students say. So something we've also been able to do is to embed feedback in terms of students using the tool to collect feedback to know how helpful this tool has been to students. From the students across the 3 institutions that have been able to use this tool, almost 80% of them, responded that the tool has been helpful in one way or the other to them. Quite a number of them, for example, a mass communication student mentioned that she realized that there's still a lot more skills that she has to acquire to be effectively digitally literate. A computer science student said, he needs to, he learned about his capabilities and areas where he needs to brush up. Another one said, I learned about aspects of digital literacy that I need to improve on. Somebody said, I learned that I still have a long way to go with learning some digital skills. Someone said, I gained insights on my existing level of digital skills and areas of expertise. So there were a number of complaints. Some students said that they felt that the assessment was a bit too long and it got tiring at some point. Another one said, yeah, I wish it could be shortened. So like I mentioned earlier, the assessment takes around 25, 30, or 35 minutes to complete. And sometimes students want things to happen as fast as possible. So that has been a feedback that we've been getting. So the dilemma is, do you shorten the feedback time, the assessment time, which also means that that means you're going to reduce the areas you have taken assessment for. So that's a feedback that we've gotten, and we're actually trying to work around to ensure that at least we find an optimal time for as many students as possible that are taking the assessment. So that's something, that's something that we have, been able to get and we've taken into consideration. And now to the last part of the presentation, and this is the call to action part. Like I mentioned earlier, thanks to the contribution and support of the Education Collaborative that has been able to, provide this, to support the development, available for different institutions are frameworks, the framework, that can be shared with, detailed information around how each of these works that you can use to enrich your curriculum, provided that you have one, or you can even use to develop your digital skills curriculum from ground up. Provided you already have a program and you just need an assessment tool for students to measure their digital skills, that's also available. Provided you just need presentation materials and guides, or even a training or orientation being facilitated for your students, that's also available. So these things are available. Grace will share with us a form which we can fill, to indicate our interest and what particular areas of the solution is of interest to us. Once that is done, just decide on what the designated office or person in the institution will be that's going to receive this assessment report. So when the students are taking the assessment, this is the particular office where all those results are sent to. This can be quite a number, as each student completes, you are getting an email. So most times it's the career office, probably it's also the employability office or the industrial liaison, depending on the kind of institution or structures you have on ground. Once you designate that person, then a link will be set up for you, which you can share with your students. Your students can respond, and then we can go through it. So that's the end of the presentation. So I think we've been able to walk through quite a number of concepts in terms of, what digital skills are. We've been able to present the framework, that expands on that. We've been able to look at different challenges of digital skilling, for higher institutions. We've been able to look at the solutions to these challenges and what is required to get, your institution on board. Yeah, so thank you everyone for listening. the floor will be open to questions, and Grace would also share the link. Grace, please let me hand over to you here.
Yes, thank you so much, Shegun, for such an insightful presentation. I have shared the registration form in the chat, so please take a minute to fill it. After the session, I'd also share it via email to all registered participants. So we'd open it up to questions like Shegun has already mentioned. So if you have a question, kindly raise your hand and then please unmute and speak. Shegun, you can stop sharing your screen. I can still see your screen.
Oh,
okay,
okay,
great. So we can see. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks very much again for that presentation. It was quite rich and insightful. And my question is, you mentioned, okay, the other thing I like about it is that you do have something, a write-up or a guidebook that helps the student once they have gotten their results to see how they can fill the gaps that they have. So I think that's fantastic. My question is, because you mentioned that some students say that it was a lengthy process to complete the assessment, how do you prepare them for completing the assessment? Is there some sort of presentation or a video or some talk you give them to prepare them to complete the assessment?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. Yeah, so I think in the different climates that we've seen this work, so I will keep referencing Pan Atlantic because they've done a very great work there. So what they do is that as part of the internship preparation, they make it mandatory. That means it's mandatory for you to complete that assessment. Yeah, I think that's a little on the high side in terms of maybe that's a little fierce in terms of implementation, but that has worked. And we've also seen students that have independently even just come to say, I'm interested in this assessment, I want to assess myself, and let us see that work. Yeah, so I think those, basically that's what we've seen work. Yeah, so it's in terms of completion, I think it's about, so what we've also recommended is this, in terms of making this work is to not just throw out assessment in a silo. If possible, let's have a dialogue first. So there are two ways we can do this. We can say, I'm faculty, I have an assessment, and I'm going to throw a link to you guys and say, go take an assessment. Sincerely yours, most of them would start, but completions would be low. So a solution or an approach we recommend is to say, we're going to have a conversation around digital skills. And then there's a facilitator that presents. Why is this important? What are we trying to do here? And then this is what, as an outcome of this conversation, which they've also been able to contribute to, the last component of it is on this or in this room, let's spend the 30 minutes together where every one of us takes his assessment. I think that latter approach works in terms of making it more of a robust engagement than just administering the poll independently. You can take a step further to then say, I'm going to incentivize probably 2 or 3 books, for students that have completed this assessment. Another thing that we consider doing, which we may also implement in the second phase, is to say course vouchers. So for example, let's say you are done with the assessment and you are seeing some places where there are still gaps. We can give you a voucher, then you can get a voucher as part of completing the assessment to then say, you can take this course at Coursera paid for. You can take this course on probably maybe Udemy or the online platforms or LinkedIn Learning also paid for. So those are the solutions or the approaches that we think would likely drive more results. Engagement beyond just rolling out alone, having the conversation, and also providing some kind of incentives for those who complete the assessment. I hope that provides some answers to your questions, even if not entirely.
Yeah, thank you. It does, just along the same lines, like you say, it's not a transactional thing, one-off, it's a continuing engagement for the benefit of the student. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Shegun, there are some questions in the chat. The first one is, can you see them or do you want me to read?
Please read out, Grace. Thank you. Please do read out.
Okay, so Caroline wants to know if you can facilitate a demo. How does your team facilitate digital skills for the world of work presentation? to students at the institutional level. That's one. And I think I saw something on the demo of the tool. You know, we had discussed you sharing institutions at least testing the tool a bit. So I think we missed out on that. So that's
Okay.
one question also Caroli raised. There's another one here. Edison is curious about testing the tool with students at Cavendish. Okay, so I'll share the link also in the chat. If you are interested, kindly register. Okay, Caroli, you have your hands up, so you can directly ask the question.
Yes, sorry. Thank you so much, Mr. Segun. I was actually trying to understand, I was talking about the link for the assessment, kind of going through it to see how it works. So we can share with students when you actually are aware of what it is and how it works. Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's fine, Caroli. Okay, link, share, okay. Noted. I think Kofi also has his hand on.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm used to teach a class in information technology, computer information systems. And one of the challenges is how to assess the level of the student in technology before you start the class, because we have different kind of student in the class. So normally my class is about information system and all the processes, strategies, and so on. But before I do that, I realized that many students don't have digital skills. They don't even understand what is a computer, and I talk about digital literacy, etc. So your tool is going to help me a lot to know at the beginning of the class what is the level of the student, because I do it, I have a survey that I pass on, but this survey is not very complete. So I think your tool is going to help me a lot in order to see what is the level of my student in terms of digital literacy. And this way I can orient my class accordingly. This is one. Second, we are reviewing and revising our curriculum. And one thing that we want to include in the general education for the student is technology literacy, digital literacy, and entrepreneurship. So this tool is going to help us really assess the level of our student in terms of digital literacy. And my question about that is, when we know our students' skills in digital literacy, how can we design a class that will help them? Because we want to introduce a class in the general education. So what kind of help do we have to design this class that will fit the different deficiencies that we have observed in the digital literacy skills of the student?
Okay. Question noted. Grace, do we keep taking more
Yes,
questions?
there's one. I can read one more question, I think, which is also in line with what Dr. Enda has shared. What strategies or resources do you recommend for students to enhance their digital skills outside of formal education settings? So you can go ahead and answer. If there are any questions, we'll read them out.
Okay. Yeah, outside formal education settings. Yeah, so the first question, by Caroli and someone else on the call, how do we test the tool with students? The link will be made available, just immediately after this session. So we can test individually as faculty, then before we administer. So that's going to be made available to us. Yeah, so one thing we also do is because of the reporting structure. So we create different links for different institutions. So I don't want Caroli to be receiving assessment results for students in HSA, right? So once your institution is ready to get on board, a link is created for you, and then that means whatever assessment comes to your career office. So that, that's not confusing. But for us on the call in general, there's a link that each of us, can just quickly test with. So that's that about that. Assessing students, yeah. Thank you, Kofi, for that. And I think that also answers a question that was asked earlier. Just like Kofi mentioned that deliberately he likes to assess the student level before the class starts. And to buttress that, I think once you are able to establish what you are trying to do in your first class, there can be a class dedicated towards, administering the assessment itself. Like I said earlier, that it takes quite some time to complete. So everybody knows that in this class today, we are doing nothing else. We're taking this assessment. And what also makes it interesting is that more than 90% of the students that take this assessment takes it on their mobile phones, right? So you don't need to be worried about them bringing the laptops to the classrooms as long as they have a phone on their mobile device or the mobile device, or whether a tablet, they can always take the assessment, in class. And then because it's an old journey, it starts from the basic ones. Even though their IT literacy skills may not be that good, they likely have Facebook profiles, or they likely have online presence, right? So it's a whole rich set of questions. But at the end of the day, you'll be able to see where each of them actually are in terms of the different stratas of digital skills. So that is good. And you also mentioned reviewing or revising your curriculum. That's good to hear. The framework would help you a long way to know what should be covered and what should be expected, and quite a number of materials alongside it would also be shared with you. Right, that's one. Then how do we introduce a class where we treat different digital tools? I think there are different approaches to this. And I think one of the lowest hanging fruits most times is even in our regular classes that even go on today. So let me give an example. So there are classes that our students take. That's our normal standard classes. There could be assignments, there could be projects that require students to get their hands on in terms of digital skills. If we had always requested for just an assignment or an essay, and all they had always had to do was also type something on Microsoft Word and get across, we can take that to the next level to say, this time around, I want you guys to analyze some data. I want you guys to generate some charts. And when you are done with those charts, put them on presentation slides, and I want you to present. And not just one person from a group will present. Almost all group members will be represented in that presentation. And tell students that that project is going to take 20 marks. For God's sake, this is not an exam. This is something that they can go watch some YouTube videos, and then they can then take. So I think as much as the idea of a new class is good, we can also be deliberate to then say, for our current classes that we do, we want to introduce some activities in terms of in terms of projects or tasks or assignments embedded in those classes that students will be required to do. And when they do or have to do, they are incentivized to actually learn these skills on their own. Trust me, what makes digital skills also easier to learn than other digital skills is that you can sit down online and learn. YouTube itself is a whole university. Almost anything you want to learn, you can learn. But there's a need for incentive. There's a need for, a reason why they want to. So that's one way, to say, okay, assistant faculty members, for your projects, for the tasks that you're assigned to students, let them have exercises whereby, digital skills are required for them to be able to get those things done. So that's one. Another thing, as regards the class you also mentioned, that's also a very good approach to say, let there be a class, for them to be able to. But like I would also say, the best test for that class is to also have what we call probably capstone projects. And capstone projects are projects that require students to have exercised these digital skills, because some students will just still take the approach of, so it won't be about what they can really do at the end of the day. It's just about, there's a class, we read, and we pour in the exam. So for a class dedicated to digital skills, most of the assessment should be based around projects in terms of what students get to submit at the end of the day. And how they present it. So that would also be key, for that. Strategies for resources to access, outside formal education. Yeah, I think I'm extremely biased towards the project approach also. So if it's not happening in the classroom, like I said, probably projects also to engage, those people that we're trying to do, what can they come up with? And like I also mentioned earlier, different digital resources that students can then use, which are mostly online in terms of the content. But once you set a clear goal or outcome of what you want students to achieve, they would on their own scramble around. Some of them, they will have to learn from their colleagues. Some they will have to go to online platforms for, but you can be sure that students will always find their way around it. So, Grace, those are my responses to those first set of questions. Do we have any others? Roland, please, you have the floor.
We have one from Professor Maud. She says we need taxes on ICT materials removed for students to afford and access. What is your view on that?
So I think when it comes to access, right, my own argument will be, trust me, there are a lot of open access materials also online today. I think, the first goal is for us to define what are the expectations in terms of the learning outcomes that we want from students. What are the competencies that we expect at the end of the day? When it comes to digital skills, there are quite a number of open access resources. Just like I mentioned, YouTube earlier, I mentioned, and this is something that the IT companies have also done very well. So what the IT companies do today is this. For a lot of their learning resources, they are freely accessible. So that's what we call open access. The only time they charge the student or they want the student to pay is when the students collect a certificate for that program. So for example, you can take a Coursera program at no cost to you, but when you want the certificate, then you have to pay. We as an institution can say, okay, as long as you show me evidence that you have completed this program on this platform, which is open access, I can always administer or provide you that certificate and then take it from there. So there are quite a number of, the first thing is for us to clearly define what competencies we want students to have, what the learning outcomes should be, and then we can always create open access resources around that. And as part of what we're also doing with the collaborative, you can always reach out to us in terms of areas where you need support, and we can always provide additional resources also to support, that.
I think we had Roland, and then Dr. Lois, you go next.
All right. So I have a few questions and then probably a recommendation. Firstly, I want to know what your future intention for this project is. How do you intend to make it sustainable and then scalable? And I also want to know if presently you have like any partnerships or arrangements in place to cater for a broader accessibility in the context of helping more students get access to the project. And my recommendation is, I don't really know if you've thought of this or this has already been mentioned, but then I was looking at the situation where every single idea or every single development is placed in a single platform, sort of an app or a website, where maybe after identifying all the necessary competencies, after coming up with anything relevant to the goals of the project, you can just create a very unique and then single platform where all these things are accessible so that it doesn't look like it's scattered across, right? And then maybe in the long run, you sort of create a community of people who continuously like contribute to the further development and scalability of the project. So kindly address the two questions, and then if this recommendation sits right with you, maybe you can pick it up and work with it.
Okay, thank you so much, Roland. Those are wonderful recommendations and those are good questions. Yeah, so in terms of scalability, I think implementation wise, we still see, this as, a lot of, we still see this project has been in the pilot phase. And pilot being that as we've been implementing across different institutions, we've been learning different lessons, right? So I would say today that the project is not in a final phase of where, this is finally here and this is what we want to scale completely. So what we've been able to do is that we've been very flexible in terms of, how it works today. So as we work with the institution and we see, the differences across, we're able to make some changes. The same thing also happens also as, like I mentioned earlier, digital skills are always evolving. As you also scale, your attention is called to, this is not covered. That also makes it easier, to scale in terms of being able to then, keep iterating and keep making adjustments. In terms of sustainability, yeah, so what we've also done commendably is to ensure that it is low resource as much as possible. So we've built on quite a number of open source tools, and that's without compromising on security. So it's quite, low resource, and then, that makes it very easier to implement in terms of, cost, and then being able to, maintain what it is. Broader accessibility, it's like I said earlier, it depends on, what each institution, how each institution wants to implement. So for example, we've had some institutions say, we only want this for students in final year or the internship year. I would think it's best for the institutions to decide, who they want to make this tool accessible to. And for your last recommendation, which I strongly agree with, yes, there's going to be a central site. The initial conversation with the Education Collaborative, which is still going to, hold, is that we are going to have a repository on the Education Collab site, such that when you go to the resources section, you see a central resource page that is dedicated to all these resources, so that we don't have just resources scattered. And just like, we're having this conversation, someone can go to that site, test a demo, and then probably even fill the form to say, I want to implement this in my institution. So that is also going to happen. The Education Collab will be the hosting site where quite a number of all these resources will be available from a central location. So thank you for that recommendation.
Thank you
Dr.
so
Lloyd.
much. Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. It was well and good. My recommendation, though, has been mentioned. I was also the same, that it's possible there should be a website that can enable the students to acquire the information. As much as we hope at an institutional level, there should be a website where all the students, when I advise a lecturer to work on on a topic, they should be able to check on your website and find a way of maybe teaching the students. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lois. Thank you, Russell Roland, for reiterating that.
Hi, Grace. Can I also ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead, and then Edison will go next.
Yes, Segun, thank you very much for the presentation. Is it my understanding that when we express the interest, the information will be transmitted to our students from your end, and then the information gets back to you to assess, and before you get the results back to us? If that is the case, what form of training and support is there for career officers at the various institutions to be able to use this manual, this training framework at our own institutions?
Okay, thank you. So let me answer that, right? So IDEM, the way it works, like I mentioned earlier, is just customization for your reporting. So once you fill a form and the information is provided to you, but like you've also said, repetitively earlier, a resource site is also coming up on the Education Collaborative where you can access as much information as possible. So once the assessment is set up, it doesn't need to get to us before you know what the results are. So like I said, immediately your student take this assessment, you get your result immediately at the career office or any designated office that you want that to. So you see that immediately, right? So it won't even wait for all the students to complete. So if you have 100 students, each minute a student completes that assessment, you get an email notification in your inbox that says, David Sanko has completed this assessment and this is what the result is. Right, so that is immediately on completing assessment. But one thing we also do is so that you can also have a campus-wide picture. That data is also available to you via as a CSV, so that you can then see the result of what is the average for each student across the different areas. Also, something we've also done in the data gathering also is that apart from the assessment questions, there are also other questions around demographics. Have you taken a digital skills training before? What department are you in? So that we won't have expectations of a computer science student mixed up with an economics student. So there are quite a number of data points which are other for analysis, but immediately your students take the assessment, get results at the career office.
Very well. Thank you.
Welcome.
Edison, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation and organization. It has been quite insightful. I'm Edison. I'm a lecturer and a manager for innovations and entrepreneurship at Cavendish University. My concern, I have taught students at this international university, and students come from different countries with different backgrounds, whereby English is not their first language. One time in class, I was teaching, and then I asked a question to a student. And this student, I realized that this student was not, figuring out the answer, was trying to figure to give me the answer. And when I came closer, I asked a friend to maybe, interpret what I had asked him. And the friend managed to speak the language of this particular student. And before this person could even finish what I was asking, this student felt so much confident and answered the question correctly. So my question is around, did you think about a translator to best represent the students in terms of their digital skills? That's my concern there.
Yeah, thank you, Edison. I must confess to you, that's something that I think we've not been able to do very well. When we set out with two languages in mind, that being English and French, in terms of, and we made the assessment available in both languages. But for languages beyond that, at this point, we've not been able to do anything beyond that. And I think it's a general education problem in Africa. Here in Nigeria, there's been a lot of advocacy to say, make learning resources available to students in local languages. Then it's an argument around what is local. So it's not something we've been able to cover very well, I must confess. But going forward, if there are strong cases, and I think also even in the learning, in the learning of digital skills itself, we do not have sufficient resources available for learners, in other languages outside English. Even French, Arabic don't even have as much representation when it comes to learning digital skills compared to what English, the English language, itself have. So hopefully there are workarounds around this. Hopefully, if there's a need to use this assessment tool or framework, there's somebody that also bridges the gap in terms of trying to explain what the questions are and trying to explain what each of the components are. But from a technical perspective, it's not something we have really done much with in terms of extending beyond, English and French.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe something small. Is there a time limit towards completion? Do you time it, or it's open to whenever?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good question. So you as an institution and thank you for this question. It answers a question that was also asked earlier. One thing that also works is to have a deadline for assessment. So for example, you can say this assessment is only open for 1 week, and after 1 week, no responses will be collected anymore. That's possible. The second thing I must also mention is that students can actually pause this assessment and come back to it later when they have when they feel that they can complete. So let's say I start on campus, I have to get on the bus, I can pause this assessment. Once I pause the assessment, a link is sent to my email. When I'm ready to continue the assessment, I can take the assessment later. So that's possible today.
Thank you so much, Shegun, for the insightful presentation, and thank you all for being so involved in today's session. This session has been great. Would want to take a photo. So our digital comms officer, Roland, on the call will direct us. So you can turn on your camera. Roland, over to you.
Hello, everyone. So glad to have everyone join the call. We're going to take a quick group photo. If you can all just, for a brief moment, switch on your cameras. So we'll have 3 chances at this. I see people's cameras turning on. That's great. That's great. We would also want to see really nice smiles as well. So just a few more minutes, a few more seconds to allow others to turn on their cameras. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Roland. Thank you all so much again. So after the session, I would share the link to the registration form again. Would also share the link for you to test the tool, like Caroli asked, and then would also share the recording. This session has been the Employability Committee of Practice. So this is a working group where we share practical models that are working in higher education institutions, just like Shegun has shared. So if you are not already a member of the community of practice, we'd also share a link, especially for those who have not already registered. So if you've not registered to be a member and you'd like to be a member, you receive a link from us to register. Thank you all so much again for being so engaged. And we look forward to each institution developing very strong programming to help our students develop digital skills tools, which is very important. Thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.